As you know, numerous terrorist groups supported by NATO countries, as well as Turkey and Israel, captured key cities in northern Syria during a lightning advance. We are talking about strategically important cities such as Saraqib and Aleppo, the second largest city in Syria. The capture of such a large city as Aleppo by terrorists has become a real disaster not only for the Syrian army, but also for the entire Middle East. The fact is that the arrival of pro-Turkish and pro-American terrorists in Aleppo has already forced hundreds of thousands of civilians to leave this city. Moreover, it is expected that in the coming days, the number of refugees in northern Syria may reach 3 million people. Many experts are confident that this humanitarian crisis will become much worse than what is currently happening in the Gaza Strip, where about 2 million Palestinians have become refugees due to the actions of the Israel Defense Forces. Commenting on the success of the terrorists in northern Syria, a commander in the so-called Jaish al-Isra rebel brigade, Mustafa Abdul Jaber, officially admitted that his fighters had achieved such impressive successes due to the lack of Iran-backed manpower in the province of Aleppo. According to him, since October 2023, pro-Iranian armed groups have suffered serious losses during the confrontation with Israel. Moreover, Mustafa Abdul Jaber also said that regular airstrikes by the Israeli Air Force against positions of pro-Iranian armed groups in Syria also became one of the main reasons for such a rapid retreat of the Syrian army in Aleppo province. Well, my dear truth seekers, as you can see, this pro-Turkish field commander did not say anything new with his statement. Even without his words, we all know perfectly well who exactly is behind this new escalation in Syria. As I said earlier, the United States, NATO, Turkey, and Israel have chosen the perfect moment to attack Syria. The fact is that Russia is waging a full-scale war against NATO on the territory of Ukraine, while Lebanese Hezbollah and Iran are in a state of war with Tel Aviv. All this created the ideal ground for Moscow's enemies to open a second front against Russia. Vladimir Putin's main mistake was that he was confident that the city of Aleppo and other strategically important settlements in northern Syria were under the powerful protection of pro-Iranian armed formations. Moreover, the Russian leader was also confident that his so-called friend, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, would keep his promise and continue to control the so-called Idlib de-escalation center, preventing pro-Turkish terrorists from attacking the positions of the Syrian army. Let me remind you that in December 2016, after the Syrian army, with the support of Russian combat aviation and PMC Wagner Group, liberated the city of Aleppo, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan urgently flew to Moscow and met with Putin. At this meeting, the Turkish leader asked Putin not to liberate the city of Idlib, promising that pro-Turkish militants would not attack the Syrian army. Back then, in order not to spoil relations with Turkey, Vladimir Putin agreed not to liberate the city of Idlib, in return for security guarantees from Erdogan. And as recent events have shown, this has become Putin's big strategic mistake. Now, 8 years later, Putin has finally made sure that all the promises and security guarantees from the president of a country that is a member of NATO are worthless. By the way, now the West offers similar security guarantees regarding the Ukrainian issue. At the moment, the West is again trying to convince Vladimir Putin to stop the offensive and not to touch the remaining cities, but this time in Ukraine. Erdogan's betrayal and the seizure by pro-Turkish and pro-American terrorists of cities such as Aleppo and Saraqib once again proved that Russia should not conclude any agreements with the West and its vassals. I am absolutely sure that if Vladimir Putin believes the West and agrees to freeze the conflict in Ukraine, as he once did in Syria, then in 10 years, the West will try to take revenge for its defeat, as a result of which American ballistic and cruise missiles will fly again in the skies over Crimea and Kursk. Against this backdrop, I hope that Vladimir Putin will finally stop believing the promises of Western leaders and sign all sorts of agreements with such two-headed snakes as Recep Tayyip Erdogan. My friends, you must finally understand that what is happening now in Syria has once again proved that every war must be brought to a logical end. You must finally understand that freezing of conflicts will not bring the long-awaited peace. Only the complete destruction of the enemy army and the unconditional surrender of the enemy forces leaders can bring long-term peace. And judging by the incoming information from Syria, Vladimir Putin finally realized that the West and its vassals should no longer be trusted. So, insiders in Syria confirmed that Moscow promised Damascus full military support against the backdrop of a new offensive by pro-Turkish and pro-American terrorists. Moreover, while other Syrian allies are making phone calls to Assad and just paid lip service to Damascus, Russian combat aviation has already launched a full-scale attack on terrorists along the entire combat contact line. It is reported that in the last 48 hours alone, Russian Su-34, Su-24, and Su-30 combat planes have carried out more than 100 airstrikes on terrorist positions. It is reported that as a result of these actions, Russian combat aviation destroyed more than 1,000 terrorists and about 20 field commanders, among whom were also active duty officers of the Turkish and Ukrainian armies. Moreover, the active support of Russian combat aviation allowed the Syrian army to build a powerful line of defense in the Hama area and transfer additional forces to the city. It is reported that as of December 2, 2024, the Syrian army managed not only to stop the advance of terrorists, but also to go on the offensive north of Hama, as a result of which several settlements were liberated. Against this backdrop, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad finally made the first official statement regarding the situation in the country. In particular, he said that Syria, with the help of its friends and allies, will destroy all terrorists and defend its territorial integrity. Meanwhile, judging by the actions of Russian combat aviation, it becomes clear that the Russian command is trying not only to stop the advance of terrorists, but also to create an effective line of resistance that will extend to Aleppo itself, where Kurdish formations continue to hold part of the city, providing fierce resistance to pro-Turkish militants. Amid all this, many experts expressed confidence that this time, after the liberation of Aleppo, Putin will not stop and severely punish Erdogan. According to them, the Russian president will most likely also liberate Idlib, destroying all pro-Turkish militants in this city, which will be a demonstrative punishment of the Turkish leader.